Hello everyone, I'm Adam Papagan. This is There's a Place, and let's start with a little ASMR calibration. Let's start tonight. Tonight's episode is brought to us by the letter D. I know that's a Sesame Street thing, but you know, it's public broadcasting. We're part of the public, and I think we'll just go ahead and jump in with D. Dangling dingoes die dutifully. That's D-Y-E, like tie-dye, no negativity. Dutiful dingoes die dutifully. Diligent dingoes, dad doesn't the train. Some more D words, huh? Dumb Dora doesn't drink Dr. Pepper. Dumb Dora doesn't drink Dr. Pepper. Here we are. Here we're coming in. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Did you hear that? Chatter. It's people having a good time. Welcome to another week of There's a Place, the ASMR talk show. The show that feels good to hear. I am your host, Adam Papagan, and so much to get to today, tonight. So we'll jump into it in a little bit, but I want to start the show talking about, I'm a sentimental guy, and you know, I have a sort of certain sentimentality for the past, even for a time that I didn't actually see myself, that might not have been so great. But I was watching a video this week and I realized that, you know, we have tons of problems today. I don't think that's in dispute, and there have always been problems going on in our society, in our country. But the real difference between today's problems, or the way we perceive problems these days, and the way problems were in the past, is just the attitude of people. And I'll tell you what I mean. I was watching a video of a press conference Elvis Presley gave in the 70s. He didn't do a lot of interviews, didn't do a lot of press conferences, but in 1970 he's done making movies. He had returned to the stage, and he is playing New York City for the first time. Sold out Madison Square Garden, so he's giving a press conference. And there, you know, this is the classic Elvis. You know, he's got his big hair, and he's got his blue polyester shirt, and he's got his sunglasses on. And they're asking him, you know, because he's been away for so long, what his thoughts are on things. So they say, Elvis, what do you think about the new groups today? He's like, oh, well, you know, I can't really talk bad about another performer. You know, there's plenty of room in the business for everybody. And then they say, Elvis, what do you think about how rock music is? He's like, well, you know, I think the music is just as good as ever. You know, he's being very magnanimous. And then a woman raises her hand, female reporter, and she says, what's your opinion on women's lib? And all the male reporters in the audience kind of like murmur, mm-hmm. And so Elvis looks at her very sincerely and says, you know, anything social like that about society, I really can't comment on, dear. So it was just such a nice, polite way to be a misogynist. You know, because even though he was shutting her down, he wasn't even answering her question. He was being nice about it. He was being that sweet Elvis that we all know and love. So people are always going to be racist. There's always going to be these prejudices. But can we please just be nice about being prejudiced? Also in this movie, it said that Elvis got plastic surgery. And I've never heard that before. It said he got plastic surgery before the army. So, I don't know, maybe the press conference was fake too. But let's jump right into it. My guest tonight is a storyteller. He has a show here on Drumebot called Busted, about taking public transportation. He has a bit of a Johnny Appleseed vibe. I'm just kind of getting that, but I think you'll see why. Please welcome my guest tonight, Scott Schultz. Hey, what's up?
Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, thanks for coming on. So Scott, when I got here tonight, you said nice to meet you to me, but we actually have met one time before.
Okay.
Skid Row karaoke.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
I love Skid Row karaoke. I don't recall meeting you though.
I was met Teardrop and
Oh, sure.
I don't know. Do you
Oh,
go?
you came with me that night?
Yeah. Do you go to Skid Row karaoke enough to for it to all blend together?
No, but I remember going with Matt and Ian.
Nate.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought Ian was the third one that went that day.
There were 4 of us. That was a wild scene.
Yeah. I used to go there quite often, and I always enjoyed it. It's very inspiring.
It was just Skid Row for the audience at home who may not make it down to Los Angeles Street, or San Julian, wherever it is. Skid Row karaoke is karaoke that they do Wednesday nights for the residents of Skid Row at one of the churches. It's like a church, right?
Yeah, it's a makeshift storefront church at 6th and San Pedro, I believe it is, across from the Midnight Mission, and it is every Wednesday. It's been going on for 20 years, and it's really great. It's homeless people, and they sing karaoke, and as you saw, they have like little traditions and little kind of pecking orders and cliques within the group, and it was very lively. I'm glad you came down. I'm glad you remember that.
It was great. I want to go again one of these Wednesdays. It was everyone was really good at singing.
Yeah, and that would have been tonight, in fact.
Yeah.
And at 9 o'clock, they all do the electric slide to
That's right.
Wild Wild West by Will Smith.
And the song selection was pretty good too.
Yeah, they could use some updated. I mean, clearly you could tell that they don't have the budget to get current discs. I think most of their music kind of ends like pre-Adele, like probably like 2005, 2006. But still a nice wide selection, and and the people that run it, they do a fantastic job, and they keep everything like no fighting, no cursing, no dirty dancing, and God, there was one other rule: no fighting, no dirty dancing, no cursing, and no drugs. That was it.
So and usually people have to drink, they say, to do karaoke. They're like, oh, maybe I'll have a couple drinks, I'll get up and sing. So it's fun to see people who are that into performing. Yeah,
it's pretty ironic. And the first time I went down there, I used to go down on Wednesday nights. I would feed the homeless with some friends of mine, and in that neighborhood, and someone was in the line, like a transgender, maybe, I don't know if she's transgender or transvestite, something like that, in that gray area. And she was all done up with a feather boa and like a really shiny outfit. So I was just like, hey, why y'all dressed up? Just kind of conversation going and stuff. And she's like, oh, is that Skid Row karaoke? And I always dress up for Skid Row karaoke. So I was like, oh, well, I'll go down there and check it out, because you look like you're really happy and it sounds amazing. And I walked in, and you see all these homeless people that look exactly like the people that you'd be handing out food to in the street, only they're singing and dancing and having a great time. And I just found it very contagious, and it just reminded me that no matter how I feel about any particular situation, if homeless people can sing and dance and do the electric slide on every week at the same time, I can get through whatever's weighing on my shoulders.
Very true. So you got into Skid Row a lot then. You spend time down there?
I used to. Really just with some friends to help the homeless people down there, and then I started going down for Skid Row karaoke just because I had a fondness for it.
You see some wild stuff down on Skid Row?
Yeah, I mean, well, I go through it on the way here too. I mean, the 720 goes right past Skid Row karaoke, in fact. If I'd known it was going on, I probably would have sat on that side and looked out the window.
It's a really wild place, Skid Row.
Yeah.
There's It's just so strange to walk around there. It's like an insane asylum, basically.
Yeah, my big concern with Skid Row now is that it's so dirty at the street level, that it's almost like not even safe, like walking through, not so much the people, but what you track in off your shoes and stuff like that. It's very hard going down there, and you can see the city, like the hipster and the new downtown LA is really encroaching onto that territory, and it makes you wonder where they're going to put the homeless people if they do that. Like, are they going to put them out in the desert or something? Yeah, lately I haven't really been going through Skid Row as much.
The thing you're talking about how downtown is sort of changing, I think that is such a scam, really, because like we already have lots of Whole Foods. We already have neighborhoods with bars and stuff. We already have lofts all over the city. We have them from Santa Monica to downtown. We have them. We don't have a lot of neighborhoods where poor people can afford to live.
Yeah. We don't have any neighborhoods in Los Angeles where poor people can afford to live. And downtown is now actually the highest rent district in the city. And even like on Skid Row right now, they're like a year ago on Santa Fe, the artist galleries were going in there, and as soon as their first year of the lease came up, they were evicted, because they're going to put in more expensive galleries and hotels in there now, which was on the cover of LA Weekly just this past week. But the thing is that this city is not really, it wasn't built for poor people because they didn't make enough affordable housing when they had the opportunity, and most of the buildings that are going in now are going to be high rent. Anything that goes along the Wilshire corridor is going to be high rent, and if you don't have apartments that are below like 1,300 now for one bedrooms, then they're never going to get affordable by the time anything gets built up. That's stuff that should have been taken care of a long time ago.
And so we have something that I've been seeing a lot of, which I'm really intrigued by. Have you noticed the amount of RVs parked all over with people living in them?
Yeah, I've actually considered buying a nice van and I have a year-long transit pass, and maybe just Airbnb-ing occasionally on weekends or something, and just kind of combining everything if I can't find a good apartment, or just find some combination. I'm seeing that a lot, the urban camping or whatever they want to call it, but that stuff will get banned eventually in this city also.
But you would actually, that's like in your sphere of possibilities? You live in a vehicle? And
oh, absolutely, but I'm eccentric and weird. And,
that's true.
So it's like, it's not like I'm going from a house to a van. I've basically had one bedrooms and studios and cramped conditions. I'm an artist at heart, so it would really just be about saving money for a year or two. I couldn't imagine doing that for 10 years, but for a couple years, save $20,000 or allow the economy to change a little bit before committing to another, apartment.
Have you thought about the practicality of it? Like where you would go to the bathroom, where you would park?
Yeah, I get a gym membership.
Okay.
I'm pretty regular, mornings, before work, and peeing, I could do that anywhere, so, and then parking, I'm sure there's probably a website devoted to...
My street, there's a bunch of them.
Oh, yeah.
I live just like kind of by the freeway.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
So they move it on street cleaning day.
Yeah.
But there's a guy at the end of my block who has a tour bus, like the kind that like Guns N' Roses would be in. Like it's huge.
So that would be like, the difference between like the sailboat people and the ones that are on the sail yacht.
Yeah, exactly. He's got the yacht of urban camping.
Yeah.
And lately he's added
Does he have electricity and stuff in there and everything?
I don't think he's there all the time, but on the weekends, it's like folds out, you know? It's just like
Yeah.
a serious camper.
Yeah.
And on the weekends, I can hear the air conditioner going in there.
Wow.
So he's got
Well, it uses
something.
a lot of gas.
Yeah, well, I guess he doesn't care because he's paying so much on rent, or this is like his hobby. But now he has a trailer attached to that.
Wow.
So he's got like 50 feet of the street.
Wow.
And
I thought before about buying a sailboat and a van, renting a dock with a parking lot, and alternating between the boat and the van.
a boat would be cool.
Yeah.
Not a lot of space though.
Well, it's just for sleeping. I have the van also. And then the beach, and I'm never home anyhow. You know, I'm just working or doing my storytelling events or going to shows. And then I could hang out on the boat or go in the van, you know. Do my writing in the van. I could write on the boat. If it's cold, I could go in the van. I could drive the van down the street and drink coffee in my front seat or something. I don't know.
You've thought a lot about this.
Yeah, it comes quick. You know, I ride the bus a lot.
Let's talk
a lot
about
of time to go over all sorts of plans.
Let's talk about the bus, because your show, you do it around town. I always see the flyers.
Yeah.
Well, I mean the Xerox, where
Yeah.
you cross out the last date and put the new one.
Well, I cut out, what I'll do is I'll Sharpie a new square of paper, about 1 inch by 1 inch. So I'll cover like November 22nd with December 27th. And I just insert that. And yeah, it's worked pretty well. I've had the same initial flyer for over 2 years now.
Yeah, well, because I was going to say, even though it may have started just like, I need a flyer crap, you know, that's now become like a brand almost, like its own own unique, recognizable thing.
Yeah, and it literally took me 10 seconds. I was running out the door to a Moth event, you know, another big spoken word event, and I needed some flyers ready because I had a show a few days later, and I didn't have anything, and I'm not an artist, so I took out a Sharpie and a piece of paper from my friend's printer, and I just wrote it out, and took it down and put them up around town, and it worked, so I just kept using it.
Do you still have the original one?
Maybe. I don't know. I moved since then.
Got it. You're not sentimental on your flyers.
No, I probably hung it up at some point. For a while, for about the first 7 or 8 months, I would hang up a lot of flyers around town, of like maybe 100 to 200 flyers between, like, say, LA City College and Church of Fun area, like Vermont Ave, to, say, Dodger Stadium. So I covered a lot of poles, and I got caught for a July flyer. I got the fine in September. Was called into, I stopped by Stories Books Cafe, or Stories LA, where my show is, and one of the owners said, "Oh, Liz has a letter for you from the city," and I thought it was like the city, you know, writing a letter of thanks. Wonderful,
they don't do that.
Civic-minded show. And it turned out they found a couple of my flyers, and they were fining me $600.
Oh.
And I went and I fought it. And Liz, you know, she's the talent booker for Spaceland Productions, so she's dealt with thousands of bands in this city over the years, tens of thousands. And she said, "Scott, no band has ever won this, just pay it." And I was like, "I'm not paying it. I'm too broke. I don't make any money on this. I'm gonna try my best." And I figured plan A would be deny it altogether, make them show the proof. But the inspector walked in, and I could see the Sharpie through the manila folder because I wrote it so heavy. And so I was like, okay, plan B. It's not cool. Takes 2 seconds to take down the flyers, and you're fining me $600. So that's like they're making $200 million an hour, and that's not fair. And that didn't work. And then I tried it's not cool. I'm doing civic duty and community, and that didn't work. And then I listened to him, and I accepted I was going to lose and pay $600 and probably kill the show because it's no fun once you're spending all that much money. And then the inspector asked me what the show was about, and I said it's about the community of passengers and riders and operators of the buses and all the different daily experiences, the good, the bad, the things that could only happen on buses, and the way you meet people when you go around and you're not driving, whether it's by bicycle or bus or train. And he says, my father was a LA Department of Transportation operator for 30 years. If you promise not to, if I get this written off for you, do you promise never to put up another sign? And I said, absolutely. And he said, if you do, if I get another one of these signs, I'm going to throw the book at you. And I said, not only will I not do it again, why don't you give me the official guidelines for posters and hanging up in the city so I can give that to the other clubs, and I could give that to the Echo and to Lot 1, and that way they can put it on their websites and everybody knows officially, what we're able to do. And that's what I did. He gave me the rule, printed it out for me. I gave it to Liz at Spaceland Productions. I gave it to Eileen at Lot 1, and I kept doing the show. And I don't hang up flyers anywhere except in legal places now.
Well, see, there you go.
Yeah, I learned a little, and he's on my mailing list now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And and that just goes to show you that little communication. That's really the way to do it, which is what you're trying to do with the storytelling overall, right? It's just engage people, talk to them.
Yeah, and it's funny because my roommate, when I got home, he said to me, Scott, you presented a better argument than anyone else, and that's why, he let you go. And I said, dude, if his father was a plumber, I'd be fucked.
So the show Busted, it's just like you said, stories about people riding the bus and stuff.
It's the official subtitle is True Stories About Getting Around Los Angeles, told by people who don't drive.
So I do drive. I took the bus for many years. I know that life. But can you give us a little preview, a little taste of one of your bus stories?
Sure.
And we can do it in a conversational way, just like the last, think about the last 5 times you rode the bus. Tell me about the most memorable one.
I'm trying to think of my most recent event that happened on a bus that's not with screaming.
Is that kind of how a lot of the stories go?
Sometimes. Well, here's a story that happened today that's not, I haven't been able to fully absorb it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens a lot of the times where I'll tell a story or something will happen and it's not quite there yet, but sometimes I just need to have time for it to simmer and resonate.
Get into your subconscious.
And maybe a month or 2 later it becomes a story, and I'll just jot a note or 2 down, or sometimes I bump into the same people on the bus and all of a sudden the ending becomes more apparent. But I met this woman today on the bus I was taking the 20 from Cloverdale, which is the current La Brea stop because of the subway construction for the Purple Line. I was taking that to Fairfax because I had to go for my physical therapy for my knee. I had surgery recently. And I was kind of creeping on a really pretty blonde in a mini skirt. I mean, she wasn't super hot, but like a bus 7. Just something.
Hot for the bus.
Yeah, it's just nothing to look at on the bus. I wasn't going to read because it was too short a ride. So I figured I'd, look at her. She was sitting in front of me, but there was this woman that had this stuffed horse with this weird, blanket poncho dress kind of thing. So I'm kind of looking at the blonde, and I'm kind of looking at the horse, and looking at the blonde and the horse, and kind of looking at the person that has the horse, and just trying to determine what her deal is. And finally, I lost interest in the blonde because she's really just a bus 7, like someone I would be interested in if I wasn't just stuck in a bus. Yeah, if I had more than 3 like view selections. So I'm at the front of the bus. I asked the woman with the horse, I go, is that a puppet? Are you a performer? And she said, no, I made a blanket, a horse blanket, and it also can be used, I can wear it, a woman can wear it. And it took me a minute to figure out what she was talking about, because she kind of looked a little crazy, maybe not full on crazy, but definitely borderline. Like she was definitely straddling the line. Like she had this white kind of lipstick balm that a lifesaver or a lifeguard would have on their nose.
Yeah.
She had it like on her lips. It was kind of weird, and she was just an odd person carrying a stuffed horse. So I mean, that's a big enough red flag. And so then she starts talking about how she wears it, and I'm like, oh, I thought it suddenly registered to me that the horse was just the thing that she put the thing on to carry this from place to place. And it had all sorts of cheap fabric and cheap ribbon that you would find in the little markets along Main Street or Los Angeles Avenue. So I'm assuming she probably came from Skid Row or one of the women's shelters down there just by the stuff that was on it. And she said, these are very popular in Texas. So I asked her, oh, are you from Texas? Because I wanted to, because sometimes I like to make conversation with people on the bus, and I found her interesting in a harmless sort of way. And she said, no, I've never been there, but I'd like to someday. My father is originally from Virginia. And then she told me that she wore it, that very same horse blanket poncho to Tijuana when she visited Mexico recently. And then I was like, oh, that's great. And then we got to Fairfax. It was a very short ride. And we both got off, and I kind of just thanked her for the conversation and did a fast step towards my therapist, and she kind of made a beeline for the 99-cent store with her horse and her other like wagon and stuff that she was carrying that I didn't see when we were initially on the bus. And a lot of the time that's kind of how initial bus stories end. You reach your stop and the story ends, and then you just try to make sense of it later.
You try to find and the moral of the story is...
Yeah, sometimes a moral, sometimes there's just like a little human connection, and that's all the story is. A recent story that I did on Busted Here was just me wearing a costume, a Howard Stern wig. That
I could see it.
Yeah. A Zach Galifianakis impersonator at the Chinese Theater encouraged me to get a wig when I was having my morning coffee at the Coffee Bean on the way to work. And so I did it, and I was really bad at it because I didn't know any of his lines. So I got discouraged, and I went home, but I had the wig, and it was Halloween. So I was like, oh, in fact, you might know Brad Roberts from Feeder. He's friends with Matt.
Okay.
And so I went there, and we were heading to Echo Park, and one person thought it was Howard Stern, another person thought it was Joey Ramone.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
kind of played with all the people while waiting for the bus in front of the IHOP on Sunset across from Hollywood High. And that's more of a fun, proactive story. And that one just ends with my bus arriving, and I get on the bus. A lot of my stories end with me just getting on the bus or getting off the bus.
What is it about the bus, do you think, that brings people together or attracts interesting people or attracts these situations to you?
Well, the thing with the bus or the train or even cycling or walking is that you're forced to encounter people. When you're in a car, you're in a vessel. You're self-contained. You're not a part of the world. You're in your own space. For a lot of people, they're in their house, they're in their car, they're in their office, and the only place they might see somebody new for the first 5 or 6 hours of their day might be in line at Starbucks, or maybe getting gas, or looking through their car window at the car window next to them, but not actually communicating. When you're on a bus, your neighbors are randomly selected for you. You don't know who you're going to sit next to. It might be an empty bus. It might be a packed bus. You could be sitting next to someone from another country. You could be sitting next to a homeless person. You could be sitting next to a professor. You could be sitting next to actresses or actors, musicians, or just, people from, difficult financial situations. They're just trying to get from job one to job two to get their ends to meet. Students, you just have people put in a situation every day, and every bus is different, and it forces you to communicate. When you're sitting, with 8 people within like 2 feet of you, you can smell them, you can feel them, you can hear them, you can watch, you can literally see what they're doing on their cell phones if they're doing that. If they're having a conversation, you can follow that. If they're talking on the phone, you can follow that. If they're having an issue with someone on the bus, and there's real life situations like that also. Fights break out, there's sales going on the bus. It's interesting. And, I don't get a story every time I ride the bus, but I get a good story a month at least. My stories are 5 to 10 minute monologues, so, I have lots of anecdotes that happen on a daily basis, but to find like a good 5 to 10 minute story, those are...
The beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
Just done commuting, just going about your life.
With an obstacle, and a lot of them are just little anecdotes that get expanded, or slices of life. You try to find the ways that it represents something larger. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you make it something smaller. Sometimes it's just something funny, something I find funny. Sometimes it just allows me to do or say some things that I find interesting. Like, I have a music background, so I like to incorporate things that I like from Yoko Ono, for example, with repetition, and like repetition of words. I do a lot of my stories, or repetition of phrases, or like adding onto the story. Like with Matt, for example, he's done music over my stories before, or other bands. I've done bands over the stories, or I try to put choruses, like where it's not a chorus, but it'll be repeating lines throughout a story as a kind of a bridge or a way to propel to the next chapter of the story, the next verse.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of musical in that way.
So that's interesting, because I think that people, when they think about storytelling, because it's kind of like hot, they got the moth now, it's not hot, as hot as a monologue could be, but people kind of equate it to being like comedy, but you're not telling jokes.
Yeah.
But you look at it more as like just as a performance.
Yeah, well,
what would you say?
Los Angeles is a little bit different from other cities with it, because storytelling is a craft that, it's a folk art. It goes back to, Homer. Oedipus was a verbally told story originally, and the Iliad, that was just passed along verbally for centuries before it was written down. And where I came from in Boston and started doing it, it was more in a traditional folk form in the Boston Cambridge style. And then the Moth, what I think, and like the other NPR type shows, I think what appealed to people initially was the human interest and the connectability, where we could all identify with these stories. And a lot of them weren't necessarily funny. In fact, maybe half weren't. But in California, Los Angeles specifically, probably New York also, it's seen as an offshoot of comedy. And that's understandable because this is an entertainment city, and we have a higher percentage of comedians and performers and sketch comedians and actors out here than they do in, say, Portland, Oregon, or Des Moines, or even Cambridge or Boston. And that's okay, it's different. Like in Boston, I would have stood out as the funny storyteller more so, even though I had other elements to my style. That would have been one of the main ways that I would stand out there. Where out here, I try to de-emphasize that, even though I think I'm always going to still be funny when I tell, and I consider my stories to contain jokes within them, even though they're true, by the words that I choose or the order of the unfolding of the story, or the way I phrase something, or even when I choose to make a repeat, or which stories I choose to tell. Or I think the humor will always be there, but I do see a difference when, like in my Busted show, for example, the majority of my storytellers are not comedians or performers. They're regular people who take the bus. Like a lot of my audience members, a lot of my storytellers began in my audience, and then I always invite people to come up and tell their stories at the end, if the stories remind them of their own, because we have such a high audience percentage of what I call green commuters. So as a result, they can tell the comedians a lot of the time when I book them, because they have a different approach to their storytelling style. And for my show, most of them still tell the true stories, but I can see sometimes, especially with first-time storytellers on my show, not first-time storytellers, but comedians who are telling a story on my show for the first time, where they have some of their comedian habits, comedian instincts, because I did stand-up a long time ago in the 90s, so I understand that. So I can see, like, when they do a delay after a punchline, for example, because they expect a laugh, or I can see a grimace when they don't get a laugh if they expected the laugh. A lot of the times when you insert jokes into stories, it breaks up the flow of the story, and because it's not natural, it's not a natural part of the story. That's where comedians are kind of different from regular storytellers, because when a regular storyteller tells jokes within the story, or comedic parts within the story, they'll keep going straight through, like they're having a normal conversation. Like if I just got off the bus and I saw you and I was like, Adam, you're not going to believe what happened. I'm just going to tell you straight through. I'm not going to do pauses for jokes for you to laugh. I'm going to just go straight through and finish the story before you cut me off and start telling me one of your stories. Because that's how friends, well, maybe friends don't cut each other off and start telling their own things. That's how my friends do. But yeah, so you can see the difference though. LA, I think a lot of it also is that storytelling, the Upright Citizens Brigade and Nerd Melt have really promoted storytelling a lot. So, and because they're kind of comedic-based organizations, a lot of the people that would find out about the classes are comedians. But I think that gradually it'll start to, I don't know, maybe LA will always be a little bit more funny-centric than other cities when it comes to storytelling. I think just the sheer number of entertainers, it'll always kind of lean that way.
Shades it a little bit.
Yeah, at least till they can't afford to live here anymore. And the entertainment industry moves to like Albuquerque or something.
Beautiful city.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
So tell us a little bit about what's the process of crafting a experience into a story. So yours are all true mostly.
Yeah.
Do you embellish them much?
A little bit sometimes, if they need it. Or
they need it.
If it's if it fits naturally within the story, I'll not so much embellish it, but enhance it. Typically, something will strike me on the bus. Usually, most of my stories are bus. I have a few bicycle, a few train, a few pedestrian, but
mostly transportation.
Yeah, well, because my show is themed on that. I have other stories, but for the busted show, what I typically do is, if an anecdote just sticks with me, sometimes I'll recognize something is going on, and I might open the memo pad on my phone and just jot a few notes down discreetly. And then if it just sticks with me, I'll maybe then write down the bullet points into my notebook, and then I'll kind of go through them over the course of the day. And sometimes a good story will just stick with you. Like, I might just start telling it the second I get off the bus, like to the first person I see. That's happened before. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's a story there. And I'll, at some point, write down the core bullet points, and that way I make sure I have my beginning, my middle, my end. You always want to know where it ends. Where are you going with it? And it helps to have an obstacle, because if there isn't an obstacle, then there really isn't a story. There's nothing to overcome. And my stories tend to have a lot of chapters a lot of the time, because like I was saying, sometimes the story takes a while to resonate, and in that time, other layers of the story occur from maybe another ride, or something triggers another memory, and like my Howard Stern story that I told begins at Halloween, saying what I dressed as, then I take it back to August, how I first got the wig, and how nobody took my picture. Then we go back to October, and then you have your first encounter, and it's this homeless biker who is trying to get basically money from me, and gets a little bit aggressive. Then the second story or the third story is an encounter with someone who's friends with PJ Souls, the actress who started Rock and Roll High School. Yeah, and so he loves Joey Ramone, and so I start singing Rock and Roll High School for him, because I realize he's filming it on his cell phone. So you have all these different elements, and and you kind of, so the initial story about failing with the wig at the Chinese theater, I brought that up on stage once or twice. It wasn't really there. It wasn't a full story, and I just didn't have it yet. And then at the Halloween, after the other two events happened back to back at one bus stop, then it made sense for Busted. So I told that part of the story. But then, I still had that first part that I felt didn't work as a standalone, but would make this newer story, which is complete, more complete. And that's how I kind of got the full story. That probably clocks in now at about 7 minutes. And I like the story. I just did it for the Busted show, at Dronebox recently, and it's been my most recent show that I do it. I'll typically do a cycle of my show Busted. Ordinarily, I'm going to be stopping my Santa Monica show for the winter because of the Ninos. I don't want to be dealing with transporting out there and encouraging other people to go out there by bus and bicycle and get stuck in the rain. So we're going to wait till the season ends. But between here at Dronebox and my monthly show at Stories LA Books Cafe in Echo Park, and at Santa Monica, or I'll take the show to other parts of the city also. It gives me 4 opportunities to do the story at Busted shows, and then I'll take it to maybe an Upright Citizens Brigade show, or to a show at Muse on 8th, which is a spoken word friendly coffee house on Wilshire, or not Wilshire, La Brea and 8th. And so then I get 5, 6 opportunities to really hone it, and then I'll kind of just bury it for a few months. And I put it in written form also, because I'm going to be putting out an anthology of those stories. And then here at Dronebox, I get to do it with the video form. And then if I want to keep playing with it, maybe I just reach out to a musician or something and say, you want to put some music over this story, or you want to put music over it, we'll do it live, or you want to do a remix of this and just take the words and you can mix it up. I don't care, because that's fun. And it's part of that Yoko Ono thing, because she's from that Fluxus movement, where they would take like one piece of art and then add onto it, and then someone else adds onto that. And, it just keeps becoming something different.
So Scott, we're almost out of time. Is there a story that you want to tell? Not like right now, but I mean that like something you're hoping happens to you, or like the ultimate story you're trying to get across with your work. Like, like a filmmaker might be like, oh yeah, the story I really want to tell is about this, or the movie I've always wanted to make.
No, I think that it would be more, and if I made a story about me, it would be an anthology of stories, and it would be a linking of just going through the city, just seeing the city from different places, and maybe it would be something more like a Route 66, quantum leap kind of thing, where you're just sitting on the bus and someone's having a conversation or a problem, and you enter into it and help their situation. And I have stories like that also, where I help like lost tourists, find their way to the Greyhound station, because that's right outside Skid Row also.
That's right.
At 7th and Alameda.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get to if you're a tourist. So, maybe it would be something like that, or, and I also do Greyhound travel as well.
So I guess that's the finale of it, is a cross-country bus trip.
Maybe I could be in Speed, the remake.
Exactly, yeah. You're always thinking about the bus.
There's a bomb on the bus. Whoa.
That's a great story, man. I think Sandra Bullock might be interested. I'll put a call out.
Yeah, okay.
Well, Scott, let's see, was there anything else? Oh, yeah, duh. When can somebody come see one of these shows? When and where?
Well, tomorrow night, we're going to be at the Rap Saloon in Santa Monica, which is in front of Hosteling International on 2nd Street, right behind 3rd Street Promenade. It's the oldest standing structure in Santa Monica. And that is at 7:30. And then my next show in Echo Park is on Sunday, the 27th of December at 5 p.m. at Stories LA Books Cafe on the 1700 block of Sunset Boulevard.
If somebody wanted to take the bus to that, they take the 2.
The 2, the 4, the 302, the 704, the 603, or the 201. A lot of options.
Yeah. Well, I'll get my Metro app going. Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show. And all of you, until next time, this is Adam Papagan reminding you that there's a place you can go and it's your mind. Good night.